Welcome to the latest Tablet podcast. My name is Ruth Gledhill and I'm the assistant editor of the Tablet. And with me again is Liz Dodd, Sister Liz Dodd. And today we're going to be talking about what everyone's talking about really, Donald Trump and Pope Francis. And we're also going to talk about a new teaching document from the bishops. But first, Pope Francis. So Liz, as you can imagine, being formerly on the desk that was next to mine in our Tablet office in Tablet Towers in Hammersmith, it's been quite a couple of weeks, really, with the whole drama surrounding the Pope's illness. One previous editor of the Tablet, John Wilkins, never had a conclave, and he was editor for years and years and years, and he never had a conclave because it was all John Paul II. And I can remember that time when it just seemed as though he was going to be there forever. And then there was what felt at the time like years of health crises. It was very different to how it is now. And even if there was clearly a health problem that you could see when he was out and about, it was never talked about, and you never got any information about it. So a lot of it was speculation or sources within the Vatican. But now we're getting so much information from the doctors at Francis's bedside. But I think people, maybe we've all thought, I don't know what we've thought, but it's a completely different situation to how it has been before.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. Like, it's almost impossible not to have your heart with the Pope in the last couple of weeks. And I wonder if you felt as a journalist the same way, that the sort of mood when he first went into hospital felt to me like it was going to be really serious. The Vatican doesn't put out statements like that very often. And I knew media people were heading towards the hospital, and I just thought, this is it. But it seems to, as we're recording, he seems to be improving. I know they're being very cautious, but I have to say that at the same time as my heart was with Pope Francis, I was also thinking of you all in the Tablet office, because this is, first of all, there's the unprecedented, as you were saying, unprecedented information that's coming out of the Vatican about how he's doing. But in a way that makes trying to cover it as Catholic journalists really challenging. When I was in the Tablet for Benedict's resignation, there was no run up to that. It just came out of the blue. I remember one Tuesday morning or one Monday morning. But with this, how are you having news conference every day about it? How are you planning for the next week's edition? That's all what's kind of at the top of my mind.
Yeah, and it's very, very difficult because we all want him to live. There's lots of reasons why we want him to not to go at the moment in particular. I personally think that he is kind of a lone voice on the world stage, speaking out from a really strong position that's from the position of Catholic social teaching. That's very much the position the Tablet takes, I suppose, to the left-wing, slightly left-wing position, on the liberal side of where the world is at the moment. Certainly not the ultra-conservative teachings that we're seeing from America and other parts of the world. What we're seeing in Germany, So we feel like we need Pope Francis on the world stage at the moment with his very strong, committed message. And it would be a terrible time to lose him. He's had lots of bronchial issues. He lost a large part of the top half of his right lung when he was a seminarian. He got cysts and he had to have it removed. And ever since then, he's had issues with his lungs. He's also had other health issues, like with his colon. And as we all know, he's in a wheelchair. He's got mobility issues. But he's got a very strong heart. He's a tough guy. No, but he's been into hospital with pneumonia before, I think in 2023, and he came out then. The messaging from within the Vatican was quite different this time to how it's been with his previous health episodes. He was reported as worrying that if he went into hospital, he might not come out this time. Lots of people have been talking in quite worried tones about the prognosis. The doctors have been very cautious with publishing the prognosis, and especially the tone of one recent update they put out, where they said, we don't want to share the prognosis because, it's still such a complex situation, made me think, well, actually, that means the prognosis could be actually quite a good one. Then had all these things coming out about a possible resignation. Now, we really don't want him to resign. We don't, here in our office, we don't want another two-pope situation. And Francis, if he started to feel better, if he resigned and then started to feel better, would he be able to keep quiet? No, he wouldn't. And it would not be not be much, and it would be, well, anyway. I think the world would be better if he remained as Pope, and as Pope, he Pope John Paul II carried on for a long time when he wasn't very well. I know he
Yeah.
indicated, and like they all do, that if he became incapable of doing the job, he would step down. He's working from his hospital bed and everything. I think he's
Yeah.
a long way from being incapable at the moment.
It's such a sort of prickly area, isn't it? Because you talked about the sort of end of the John Paul II papacy before, and I've just been working on my column, talking a little bit about this. And I know that with the end of John Paul II's papacy, it became very much about, the witness that he was giving the world through his fragility. I don't know if it became too much of that. And I think what we're starting to hear about the possibility of a resignation is because Francis has never indicated that he wanted his witness to be that. But I think maybe what we're seeing is something similar. You were talking about Trump earlier. What I've really felt in the last few days, why I want Pope Francis to come out of this as strong as ever, is because, as you say, he is a thorn in the side of Trump and Vance. And if an 88-year-old with double pneumonia can, from his hospital bed, be speaking the truth about Donald Trump, why on earth can't our prime minister do the same thing? So in a sense, I wonder if some of the transparency around his health is because it just makes it clear, here is a man who is facing down his mortality. He knows what the real value of human life is, because his own is there in the balance right now on the world stage. So all he's got left is courage and faith. And from that courage and faith, he's still phoning that parish in Gaza. That for me has been the bellwether. When he's well enough to call them, when he's texting them, I think he's on the mend. And when he doesn't, then I think he's really, really poorly. But I think the witness that he's giving us is a little bit like St. John Paul II. But it's a very different flavour. It's a very sort of Francis flavour. And it just makes me desperate for him to get better and carry on.
I mean, I do think if he can come through this, and I think they're now not using the word critical in terms of his condition. If he does come through this, I think it will strengthen his witness.
Yeah.
Everyone will listen to every word he says, and I think it will carry a more powerful punch even than it has in the past.
Yeah. I do wish that over the really sort of darker days, they had let him just be unwell. There was a point when the Vatican was putting out things about, oh, he's up and he's in his armchair and he's working. And I thought, is he, there's no shame in him being so unwell he can't answer his emails. And I didn't like that the Vatican was sort of leaning into, or maybe it was Francis was leaning into that mentality of he's only good as long as he's productive. He's still a great pope if he is.
And he's always said he wants to carry on working as long as he can. And maybe he's trying to show the world that he's not intending to step down and he is still capable of working, and not to write him off yet. So maybe that's why he's doing that.
And I have to say, I know quite a few nuns of a similar age who would also be answering emails and doing Zoom calls, even if they were in that precarious of a health state. So, maybe he's just of that sort of variety of person.
I remember I went into hospital a few years ago with a critical illness, and stared death in the face then as well. I remember when I first became able to make a phone call. I mean, it was a long time before I could even press the buttons on a phone. I remember I was terrified. I really was thinking, I've got to get back to work, because this is, if I can get back to work, then I know I'm going to live and survive. And So I had some, I think I was going to reviewing some books or something. I thought there were some books I needed to read to do something I was working on for Brendan, the editor. And I got the office to send me these books to the hospital. And I remember after making that phone call, the books that did arrive, and I just sat there and looked at them and I couldn't open them. And I couldn't work. And I suddenly realized I can't do this. I've got to recover. And I kind of collapsed at that point and kind of just because I couldn't sit up. I was on my back and with tubes and things. And the doctors and nurses must have thought I was completely mad having these books. My bedside waiting to be read, all these workbooks. And anyway, so I think the fact that he is able to work at all is actually quite significant to me. Is that he
Yes.
actually is got a very strong chance of pulling through this, and I really hope he does.
Yeah.
I really want
I
him
think
to come back.
I think that is such a great insight that you just shared, because it's a really human thing, isn't it? I understand completely where you're coming from, that it's normality, isn't it? Work, and it's your way of communicating with and being in the world. And so it's a test for whether things are ever going to get back to normal.
Yeah, and my husband used to come and visit me every day he came, and he'd say it's better now, isn't it? You're going to pull through this, and I'd say no, it's not. You know, I'm not out of the woods yet. It's still touch and go, and it was like that for about a week or 10 days. And so when the doctors, I understand completely where the doctors are coming from. They just don't want to. Yeah, I did get better. The doctors just don't want to say he's going to get better because you just can't tell. But the other thing about there was this nurse who, when I was on the really serious ward, the cardiac ward, and intensive care ward, there was a nurse who just sat there throughout the night and held my hand. And I remember it was like people say, she was like an angel, and and it was really incredible. I couldn't really talk or anything like that, and she was just I was aware of her, and it was like she kept me anchored to life and to the world. And I remember when in that experience, um, feeling when I finally came through that and suddenly when I was able to get out of bed that I thought I am going to get better, and I still had to push this thing with all the bags on around the ward, you know, but I was able to get out of bed and take a few trembling steps, and I thought a miracle has occurred, and yet you know, it wasn't obviously a miracle, you know, in true terms of the miracle. It was just the skill of the doctors in making me better. And hospitals are incredible places. It sounds like saying the obvious, but I'd never been in hospital in that situation or like that before. And I'd always often thought if you go into hospital, that's it. You know, you've had it. That's the end. If you're in hospital with a critical illness, you're not coming out. But I changed my view of hospitals. And hospitals now, to me, are places that make you better. When you're really ill, you go in and they make you better, even from really, really dire situations, health situations. And so I feel that's what they're doing with Pope Francis. They're making him better.
Yeah. And there's something, so I remember you talking about that nurse holding your hand in the ward when you came back into the office and being moved by it, just like I am now. And there's something so core to our identity as people of faith, something so Christian, if you want to sort of say that, about being in that space with another person. And what I think is so extraordinary about what's happening with Francis at the moment is that it's happening at this time, you know, when there's, I'm just going to go straight out there and say, when there's so much evil, you know, happening on the world stage. And the person who is standing against it is an 88-year-old man with double pneumonia. And there, in his vulnerability, he's standing up to this thug. Right?
Yeah, I know, isn't it amazing?
I mean, what more Christian metaphor can you have than that? You know.
I know. I always thought his legacy, he'd be remembered for Laudato Si, and his refugees and migrants policies, and the Synod on the Family, and this latest Synod on Synodality, more longer term perhaps. But now I think he'll be remembered for this episode as well. And that it'll be it's a real landmark moment. And I think it's really powerful because it's a credible witness to the world.
It is, yeah.
Courage.
And particularly, as I say, because he is every day. I mean, I don't want to project too much onto the American president, but every day that he lives is an inconvenience to Donald Trump. And it is, he's somebody who is not cowed by Trump. Trump has nothing to offer him or negotiate or bribe or whatever, nothing whatsoever. And so Pope Francis is utterly free within the constraints of diplomacy and the Holy See. I understand all that. But he's completely free to just speak the truth in a way that doesn't seem to me a lot of other people are doing.
Did you see that Gaza video that was posted? It's like a golden calf moment, isn't it?
Unbelievable. I saw that when it was first circulated, it came from somewhere that had no connection to the White House.
Yeah, I don't think he made it.
To describe it to people who haven't seen it. So it's an AI generated video depicting a Trumpian vision for Gaza, which is Gaza transformed into Dubai, effectively, sort of glittering skyscrapers.
It was a golden statue of Trump.
Golden statue. Trump is dancing with belly dancers. Elon Musk is there eating flatbread. It is just like a nightmare, And he's circulated it. Whether he's doing that because he's being ironic, or he thinks it's funny, or he thinks it's visionary in the worst possible world, but all that level of narrative going on at the same time as Sir Keir Starmer standing side by side with him and saying, "This is my good friend in the Oval Office," at the moment, to me, just begs belief. I cannot get my head around it.
And he'll be coming over soon, to stay in Buckingham Palace
for a state visit. I found myself saying to my sisters when we were watching the news and the press conference, and Starmer was talking so much about the relationship with America and the trade deal and all this kind of thing, and I was like, at what point, my sisters are in their 80s and they've seen a lot of global history, and I was like, at what point do you back off from being an ally? Talk to me about what happened with South Africa. At what point do we say, and why have we not reached that point where we say, we don't want to be allied to this? In good conscience, we can't be. On the same day that Starmer was over there, or in the background, Andrew Tate was this misogynist was being airlifted out of Romania with ongoing criminal proceedings and taken to America. And that's who Trump is allying with. Why on earth can't our government?
And what's going on with US aid? Really, it's just I could never have imagined that kind of thing could ever happen.
Awful.
All these
people, government,
thousands of people losing their jobs, and but the work that they do is essential for helping the most deprived and the most marginalized people. Just like
and it happened in a really cutthroat way as well, from what I've heard speaking to some of my American friends who've got friends who work in those programs. Suddenly overnight they had to cut jobs, rescue jobs, justify jobs. There was no, for someone who claims to know about running business, there was no forward planning.
And but Musk has just taken the same approach to it that he took to Twitter, hasn't he? Which is now X.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it's going to end. we do have a prospect of some kind of bizarre peace in Ukraine coming up, but it's a terrible cost.
Is it? I mean, this is the plundering Ukraine's resources.
Mm.
Just every time I watch the news or I read the news, it's another horrible turn. I mean, the idea that the US government is predicating its help in Ukraine on minerals, being able to mine minerals that who knows who's going to have access to them in a year's time, apart from anything else. It's just baffling, and yet he's getting away with it. Trump is getting away with it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
He's got so much political capital, astonishingly, on the world stage that he can just keep doing it.
That is what it's extraordinary, that he is getting away with it, and how, I mean, I remember all through the years, I remember when the Holocaust Memorial Day was being set up, and the mantra was never again, and never forget. We must never forget. And I used to think, yes, that's right, but of course we won't forget. Of course this won't happen again. How could it happen again? It was unconscionable when it happened, and we know better now. And
Really?
5 minutes later,
It's happening again.
yeah.
My hope is that this is a moment, and Francis is showing us this, it's a moment for the churches. It's a moment for people of faith. If we can be really courageous, there are some fantastic stories coming out of America about dioceses, Episcopalian dioceses, and Quaker and Methodist congregations that are suing the Department for Homeland Security to prevent immigration raids in their churches. And that is a powerful image. The idea of ministers and congregations blocking the doors so that ICE can't get in and forcibly remove or arrest people who come into their churches. I think that's so powerful. We haven't heard anything from the Catholic Church saying that they're going to do it yet, but you never know. We can hope. But at least the light for me in this is that when there is a force of evil as great as there is in the US government at the moment, at least it gives people of faith a chance it gives them something to hold on to and say, we don't know what we're for, but we know we're against this. And if that means we have to block it, like the Middle Ages, if we have to declare sanctuary within our churches and let migrants come and be safe in there, great. You know?
Yeah. So what the bishops do know what they're for is social action. And we haven't got much time left, but we've got a few minutes when we can just talk about this document, Turning Tables, that the bishops of England and Wales have put out. And of course, this is directly what links to what you and your sisters do, isn't it? And what you do in your house. And you're such an incredible witness to the church at the grassroots level, changing society from the bottom up. Do you think, why did they produce that report now, and why did we need it now, do you think?
Very good question. Something in the back of my mind is that when was I last in the tablet office? 4 or 5 years ago, somebody who worked at the Bishops' Conference said a document like this was in development. I can't quite believe it's taken them 5 years, but things move slowly in the Catholic Church, so maybe it did. But I think it's no coincidence that they put it out now, and I am impressed. I do not, I know I can be quite critical of our Bishops' Conference, but this is a really good piece of work. I think that it's not credited that I've seen, but my speculation would be that Philip Booth, who's the Bishops' Conference kind of head of policy, director of policy, who used to be at the IEA, I think maybe he had something to do with it because it's very politically astute. The best part of it, there's a fantastic section at the end that talks about what you can do. And often I think we miss that in church guidance, but this section is all about what we can do, how to get in touch with your member of parliament, how to organise a protest or an action. It's really tangible encouraging stuff. There's a lot of good theology and a lot of it's a scriptural resource, so there's a lot of scripture, but that last chapter in particular I thought was good. I would have loved to see mention of the Catholic worker in there. I think that was overlooked as a good example and a great resource, but overall it really is worth looking into. It's on the Bishops' Conference website, and I'm sure it'll be somewhere or linked into on the tablet website as well.
Yeah, we've covered it. Yeah, we've run a story about it, and
it's good, and it's what the churches in America are doing. We've got there is a political angle to our faith, and we've got great resources.
And again, I think this, there's no time like now when this kind of thing is so important. And it's great that they have done it now, and I hope that it gets the recognition and the traction that it merits.
I agree.
Exactly what the church and the bishops should be doing.
Yeah, I would love them to have said, lie down in front of an immigration van, or get arrested doing something outside the ministry. I understand why they didn't though. That's not everyone's location, is it?
Well, we're going to have to call it a day now, but I'll put links to what we've been talking about and coverage on the tablet website in the show notes. Thank you, Liz, for your time again. And
thank you for having me.
To reading your next column. Go away and pray for Pope Francis.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you for watching and listening. Please like and subscribe in whichever app you're listening to this in. We're available on all the usual ones, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also on YouTube. And please do subscribe to the tablet. You can find our latest offers at thetablet.co.uk/subscribe. And our newsletter is free and comes out twice a week. Thank you. Goodbye.